Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. I'm your host Hayat. Today, we're breaking down full NBA slate for March 5th, and I'm walking through every angle the same way I do on camera, thinking out loud, working through the matchups, the recent form, the spreads, totals, injuries, and all the situational angles that could realistically play into how these games unfold. All in one deep dive. This is pure analysis and opinion, no guarantees, no promises, just how I see the slate shaping up if these games play out according to trends, recent performance, and matchup nuances. Guys, our target is hitting 2K subscribers, so if you enjoy these deep dives, make sure to subscribe while you watch, it helps the channel more than you know. First we've got Utah Jazz vs Washington Wizards. The lean here is over 241.5, but I'm also leaning on Utah Jazz. Let me walk through why. Okay, so Jazz just lost a close one to Philadelphia 102-106, right? That's not a blowout, but it's low scoring enough that I immediately start thinking about their historical bounce back after low output games. They scored 105 versus Houston and then 118 versus New Orleans, and 105 versus New Orleans right pointing arrow 125 versus Denver. That's a clear offensive reaction pattern for me, and I can see it happening here. Now Washington just got smoked by Orlando 109-126, and they weren't exactly defending well, 126 points allowed. That's a lot, and with Jazz capable of scoring 118-125 after low outputs, this is screaming points. Spread is Washington minus 2.5, but the lean on Utah Jazz makes sense if you think about it like this. Jazz have that post-low performance bump and Washington is coming off a poor defensive showing, so if Jazz plays like they usually do after a 102-106 type game, they could easily cover that close spread. Trae Young being back for Atlanta is a fan note, not directly affecting this matchup. But it's in the back of my mind. The total is 241.5, and honestly, Jazz scoring 118-125 in these bounce-back games, plus Washington having allowed 126 recently, puts me squarely on over 241.5. One path I see here is Jazz keeping pace offensively while Washington comes out motivated to correct their defensive mess versus Orlando. Both teams trading buckets, pushing the total high. What connects for me is the Jazz's pattern of offense after low scoring and Washington's recent defensive vulnerability. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at over 241.5 and I like Utah Jazz in this one. Next up, we've got Dallas Mavericks vs Orlando Magic. Lean here is Orlando minus 8.5. Okay, so Dallas comes in on a rough streak, lost to Charlotte 90-117, Oklahoma City 87-100, and Memphis 105-124. That's 3 straight double-digit losses, and they haven't covered the spread in 4 straight games. They are plus 8.5 underdogs here, but this number almost feels generous given the Dallas form. Historically, Dallas has won the last 4 meetings against Orlando, including a 101-92 win back on March 27, but trends matter here. Orlando recently beat Washington 126-109. And their last 4 games are 2-2 both straight up and against the spread, which tells me they're capable of winning decisively but also dropping competitive games. I like the way Orlando's roster is set right now, even though Cooper Flag is out. Dallas without that firepower is a real, bet against, scenario. One scenario I see is Orlando controlling the pace, hitting open shots, and forcing Dallas into their current slump pattern. Another path, Dallas scrappy, maybe keeps it closer, but I'm leaning into the overall trend. Orlando has had success against teams struggling like Dallas and they have the confidence from the Washington blowout. The spread is minus 8.5, and with Dallas losing 9+ point games recently, it's hard for me to see them covering. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Orlando minus 8.5. Next, we have Brooklyn Nets vs Miami Heat. Lean here is Nets plus 12.5. So Brooklyn is on fire, if by fire you mean 1-9 in their last 10 and 2-8 against the spread. They just got absolutely demolished by Miami 98-124. Miami had all players available, and this isn't even the first time. They've been consistently strong and just won 3 in a row, though rarely did they go 3-0. Spread is Miami minus 12.5, which aligns with that 26-point demolition in the last meeting. Brooklyn played Claxton, Clowney, Porter Jr., Williams, so they are at least showing effort, but the team just isn't clicking. One path I see here is Miami coming out motivated to keep dominance over Brooklyn, but if Brooklyn pushes pace and catches Miami in a spot where the game gets out of hand early, they can cover the 12.5. What connects for me is Brooklyn's desperation factor. They know they've been losing, so they might play with more energy, especially if the first quarter gets competitive. The total is 225.5, but given the Nets' struggles and Miami's firepower, I'm leaning on them keeping it within that spread. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Nets plus 12.5. Next we have Golden State Warriors vs Houston Rockets. The lean here is Golden State plus 9.5, expecting a close game despite the spread. Let me walk through why. Okay, so Golden State comes in on back-to-back losses versus Clippers and Lakers. And we have to remember, they're still without Steph Curry, who isn't expected back until mid-March. That's huge. No Curry means Golden State's offensive engine isn't fully online, but they've still got pieces that can create shots and keep it competitive, especially in bursts. Houston, on the other hand, is rolling a bit. They beat Washington 123-118 and have won 4 of their last 5 games, so confidence is high. Shepherd getting moved into the starting lineup and playing more minutes. That's interesting, especially with improved outside shooting. It changes Houston's spacing and pace, makes them harder to guard, but also opens up opportunities for Golden State to exploit mismatches. Previous meeting went Houston 104-100, so the teams were already close once this season. Spread is 9.5, which feels large given Golden State's capability to hang, especially if Houston has an off quarter or two, which happens. They're good but not perfect. One path I see here is Golden State grinding the pace, maybe leaning on mid-range shots and getting some fast break points off Houston miscues. Houston likely scores in the 110s or 120s, Golden State in the 100 to 110 range, which keeps this within single digits. What connects for me is Golden State's ability to claw in the absence of Curry and Houston's tendency to not blow teams out unless they're clicking on all cylinders. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Golden State plus 9.5. Next, Toronto Raptors vs Minnesota Timberwolves. The lean here is Raptors plus 6.5, expecting a revenge angle and potential Minnesota letdown. Minnesota is coming off 4 straight wins, straight up 7-3 in their last 10, but against the spread they're 3-7, which is a trend I can't ignore. They beat Toronto 128-126 in their previous meeting, so this is a team Toronto knows they can hang with. Raptors come in 35-26 on the season, lost their last game to the Knicks 95-111, scoring under 100 points. Now, normally Toronto doesn't lose 3 in a row, which sets up a psychological rebound. They're a team that responds after a loss and wants to prove it. Spread is Minnesota minus 6.5, and yeah, they're favored, but the letdown potential is real here. Raptors have firepower, they've got veterans who can take over late, and if Minnesota hits one of those off nights where they let underdogs hang close, Toronto plus 6.5 is alive. One path I see here is Minnesota coming out confident after 4 straight wins but maybe taking Toronto lightly in the first half. Raptors stick around, and the final quarter becomes a tight battle. Raptors have the capacity to score 110 in this scenario, Minnesota maybe 115, which keeps the spread close. What connects for me is Toronto's revenge factor, history with Minnesota, and the trend of Minnesota underperforming against underdog spreads. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Raptors plus 6.5. Quick pause. If you've got an even one lean or insight you like so far, smash that like button. It tells me these full NBA slates are worth breaking down. And while you're at it, hit subscribe. We're chasing 2K subscribers, and your support keeps these detailed, raw, thinking out loud breakdowns coming. Stay with me because after these 9 matchups, I'll be giving you some rapid fire quick picks you won't want to miss. Next we have Detroit Pistons vs San Antonio Spurs. Lean here is Spurs minus 3.5, expecting San Antonio to flex at home against strong competition. Spurs are on fire, won 9 of their last 10 games, best performances against top teams, like they crushed Thunder recently. Occasional bad quarter, sure, happens, but they dominate overall. Detroit comes in considered overrated in the West context, number 1 in East, but would be like a fifth team in the West if they switched conferences. Previous Detroit game was a close 109-113 loss to Cleveland, so they can hang in there offensively. But against a disciplined Spurs squad at home, that margin is narrow. Spread is 3.5, Spurs favored, which feels right. One path I see here is Spurs coming out strong. Detroit tries to push pace to keep up, maybe hits some early threes. But Spurs' depth and execution in crunch time maintain that small cushion. Detroit likely puts up 105-110, Spurs 110-115, a close game but Spurs control the finish. What connects for me is Spurs' strength versus quality teams, their home advantage. And Detroit being overhyped when facing tough defensive-minded squads. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Spurs minus 3.5. Alright, next, we've got Chicago Bulls versus Phoenix Suns. The lean here is Suns minus 11.5, and honestly, this one feels like a classic, Bulls showing up inconsistent, Suns clicking at home, type of matchup. So Chicago recently broke a long losing streak. They covered versus Oklahoma City, and even beat Milwaukee 120-97, which was impressive, but here's the thing, they've only shown up for 3 straight games 3 times this season. Mid-January, mid-December, and mid-end of October. That's not exactly a pattern of consistency. And now you throw in the day-to-day status of Buzelis, Giddey, Williams, Smith, and Simons, and you start wondering how much firepower they really have ready tonight. Suns, on the other hand, are coming off big wins versus Sacramento and Lakers. They're in a groove, and they've got another quality opponent on deck with Pelicans soon, so they're not letting off. Spread is Suns minus 11.5, total 225. And given the Bulls' inconsistency and the Suns' recent dominance, I can see this staying right around that double-digit margin. One path I see here is Bulls maybe hitting a few early shots, trying to hang around. But Suns just keep answering, fast pace, spacing the floor, and controlling the glass, especially with Phoenix's depth. What connects for me is Bulls' streaky nature. When they aren't clicking on all cylinders, they're susceptible to these high-scoring, disciplined teams like Phoenix, and with the Bulls' key guys day-to-day, that vulnerability is magnified. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Suns minus 11.5. Next, Los Angeles Lakers versus Denver Nuggets. Lean here is Denver to win and cover, and I'm also leaning on the over. Lakers have won 3 straight, taking down Golden State, Kings, and Pelicans, and sit at 37-24. But all those wins were against teams not considered very strong, so you have to ask, how battle-tested are they right now? Denver, 38-24, comes off a win versus Utah but lost 2 of their last 3 games, so they're not unstoppable, but they've got the Joker game factor, Nikola Jokic expected to dominate this one. Spread is Denver minus 5, which I like, and total is leaning over, which makes sense given the firepower on both ends. One path I see here is Jokic controlling the paint, Lakers trying to keep up via perimeter scoring, LeBron and Davis pushing pace, Lakers might hang in. But Denver's depth and Jokic's versatility keep them in control. Off-court fireworks between J.J. Redick and Luka. Honestly, probably just distractions for Denver to exploit. They're used to ignoring noise. What connects for me is the contrast between Lakers' soft recent wins and Denver's ability to execute in high-pressure moments, plus the offensive firepower from both teams fueling an over scenario. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Denver to win and cover with over in mind. Finally, New Orleans Pelicans versus Sacramento Kings. Lean here is Pelicans minus 4.5, and if the spread drops to 2.5, take the Pelicans moneyline. Pelicans played a tight loss versus Lakers 101-110, with Zion in that game, and now the team is relatively healthy, though Zion and Troy Murphy are still day-to-day and Dejounte Murray is out reconditioning. Sacramento is decimated, Hunter, Sabonis, Levine, Cardwell, and Murray all out, plus they just lost back-to-back versus Suns and Lakers. Spread is New Orleans minus 4.5, total 233.5. And looking at the roster situations, this feels like a Pelicans control the pace type of game. One path I see here is Pelicans starting strong, exploiting Sacramento's depleted roster, moving the ball, hitting open threes, and keeping the game in their control. Another scenario is Sacramento scrappy early, maybe keeping it within 2 to 3 points in the first half, but Pelicans' depth and health catch up late. What connects for me is Pelicans' relative health versus Sacramento's injury chaos, plus the psychological edge after a close loss versus Lakers. They want to reassert themselves. Yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Pelicans minus 4.5, and if spread drops to 2.5, Pelicans' moneyline becomes very attractive. Alright, that wraps up all 9 NBA matchups for March 5th. As always, this was analysis and opinion only, nothing guaranteed, just me thinking through how these games could realistically play out if the situations line up the way they look on paper. Now, I'm curious how you're seeing these spots, so drop AZ in the comments and let me know which game stood out to you or if you're spotting angles I didn't highlight. And don't forget, after this deep dive, there's a quick set of picks I'm sharing for other games today, so stay tuned. Let's hit the 2K subscriber mark together, same raw format, same deep dives, more NBA insights coming soon.